Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and I wanted to talk about men today and how vulnerable a lot of them are. So I'm going to read from my script. I've got to leave for work, so bear with me. We need to talk about men, not the men in headlines, not the men reduced to statistics or slogans, the men who are falling through the systems that insist they don't exist. Because when a man falls, he doesn't fall loudly, he falls quietly. And quiet suffering is easy to administrate away. There was a time, especially in working class families, when a man's role was clear: work, provide, protect. You carry the weight so others don't have to. You don't complain because the system was never built to hear your complaint. That worked until the rules changed, not in one announcement, not in one vote, but across decades of policy, legal reform, and cultural shift. Now a man can do everything society once asked of him: work hard, buy his own home, build a family, show compassion, and still lose the very foundations he built. Picture a man who owns his home right outright. He meets a woman, she is vulnerable, she has disabilities. He opens up his life and his property to her. Not because he must, but because he believes decency matters. A child is born. He believes he is secure. 2 years later, the relationship ends, and suddenly the system begins to speak about him without speaking to him. Property law, family court assumptions, housing policy thresholds. No single official causes the outcome, but the outcome still happens. He leaves the house he paid for, she stays, and when the house is eventually sold, the damage is already done. This is not about failure of kindness, it is a failure of recognition. And before anyone rushes to misunderstand, this is not about taking protection away from women. It's about admitting that men are being crushed by invisibility. The government does not see this because they live in instability. They live in homes that don't disappear after a breakup. They make decisions from positions of safety. They've never had to, they've never been one, sorry, they've never been one emotional betrayal away from sleeping in a car. Sorry about that. That was a bit of a tongue tie. Men are told to open up, to be vulnerable, but when they do, there's no net, no emergency housing, no cultural sympathy, no language for male loss that doesn't sound like failure. So men internalize it, they go quiet, they stop trusting, they stop believing they are worth protecting. And then we act shocked when the statistics show men taking their own lives in numbers that should stop the country cold. This is not coincidence, this is neglect. What we struggle to say out loud today is that men can be emotionally disarmed. Men can be manipulated not through force, but through love, obligation, shame, and hope. And here's where the system comes in. Because when relationships break down, the state steps in, not as a neutral observer, but as an arbiter of outcomes. Family courts, housing lists, welfare decisions. These systems were designed with good intentions, often to correct historic injustices towards women. But in doing so, they created a new blind spot. Men are assumed to be resilient by default. If a woman leaves a relationship with a child, she is seen as vulnerable. If a man leaves the same relationship, he is seen as responsible, even when he has nowhere to go, because our institutions operate on an assumption that men have capacity, emotional, financial, practical, long after that capacity has been exhausted. So let's talk about another man, divorced, broken, still showing up to work because the bills don't care how you feel. But he's homeless now. He goes to the council. He's told he's low priority. Low priority for shelter. Low priority for stability. Low priority for dignity. Low priority for survival. And do you know what that does to a man? It tells him he's failed, that the one thing he was raised to believe mattered. Low priority does not mean low need. It means the framework does not know where to place him. Housing systems are designed to identify vulnerability quickly, But vulnerability that does not fit the template is often filtered out. A man without dependence, a man without visible disability, a man who is expected to manage, and so the system moves on. Family courts speak the language of the child's best interests, but often struggle to articulate the father's material collapse as a risk factor in itself. Employment systems assume continuity and productivity even as personal foundations disintegrate. Welfare systems assess immediate crisis, not cumulative erosion. None of this is malicious, but none of it is neutral either. Men can be undone, not by fists, but by intimacy. The Bible knew this long before modern politics, long before social policy. And here's where it connects to wider truth about power, because the Bible warned us long before modern governance about intimacy and influence. Samson did not lose his strength in a single moment. He lost it gradually through trust that was never protected. Joseph was nearly destroyed not by wrongdoing, but by an accusation that carried institutional weight. Power is always intimate, not always emotionally, but structurally. Intimacy is access. Who gets into the room? Who is heard before decisions are made? Who can whisper while others wait outside, knocking politely? The wealthy understand it instinctively. Access buys influence, influence buys insulation. They can filter. Compare that to ordinary men. They are asked for relational intimacy, trust, patience, sacrificed honesty. They are intimate with responsibility, with risk, with obligation. And when something breaks, a relationship, a home, a sense of belonging, they discover how little access they actually have. They can tell their story, but it doesn't travel far. They can ask for help, but it arrives late, if at all. They can be vulnerable, but vulnerability without access is exposure. The system is good at identifying visible crisis, but slow burn vulnerability, the quiet erosion of confidence, stability and trust, often goes unseen until it becomes collapse. By the time the help arrives, the damage is deeper, the intervention more complex, and the human cost much far higher. Men are not failing the system is failing to see them, and this is not accidental. Distance is mistaken for neutrality. Access is mistaken for fairness. Consultation without consequence is treated as connection, and people, especially men, feel it in the spaces that matter most. The homes lost, families fractured, dignity eroded. The Bible tells us to guard what is precious, not because it is weak, but because it can be lost. Men are precious, their stability is precious, and yet it slips through the cracks while the machinery of policy moves on, oblivious. The Bible says guard your heart, not because love is bad, but because betrayal can destroy a man faster than violence ever could. And yet we send men into emotional battlefields without armour, without warnings, without backup. We need to stop pretending this isn't happening. We need to stop pretending that vulnerability only belongs to one gender, because a society that ignores broken men doesn't become safer. It becomes colder, and one day we will look back and ask, how did we miss it? The answer will be simple. They were falling quietly and no one was listening. Power that never shares risk will eventually lose legitimacy. And intimacy that is mostly directed toward people or system that hold more power than they do, while the risks land on the very people who are already carrying the weight, will eventually turn toxic. And until that changes, men will keep falling quietly. And one day, the collapse will no longer be quiet. So I thought I would speak for men because it's just sad what's happening. You know, so many of them are being affected by broken relationships. And no wonder there are so many who are mentally ill and have illnesses and who are taking to drink and all sorts. Not everybody is strong. Not everybody has the same disposition. And that doesn't just apply to men. It applies to women at all. Everybody's made differently. Their makeup is different. What they can tolerate is different. So I hope this gives you a new perspective. So you take care now. I better get ready for work. And I hope you found this interesting and informative. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.